Hello, everyone. It's Dorian. And if you don't know me, I am the founder and creator of the Limitless Lifestyle Academy and Sphericality, which is my brick and mortar studio in Flemington, New Jersey. So I'm going to wait a couple of seconds to see who we get on here to talk about part 2 of slow carb eating. So I'm going to turn the chat on here and just let me know that you're here. That would be awesome. Sometimes it shows the name, but other times it doesn't. But just say, hey, let me know you're here. And I'll get started in a sec. Just let a couple other people come on. Hey, Kristen. Hey, Chris. Okay, I've got a bunch of people. Just say hey if you're here. If I can see your name, that'd be awesome. All right, so we're going to start to talk today about part 2 of the whole glycemic index picture. And I wanted to start by making a clarification. When I did the playback of lesson 1 yesterday, I was definitely not clear about something, a calculation I gave you. I gave you a calculation for calculating net carbs, and I was trying to compare it to the glycemic index, but that is not the calculation for glycemic index. Glycemic index is something you have to reference from a table. Some of those tables I shared after the talk yesterday, okay? So to be really clear that is only for calculating net carbs, and you're gonna see how that plays into our discussion for today as well. So we'll start with that. Net carbs are what we call digestible carbs. So you can look on a food label and you'll see like total carbs, and then it might say fiber, and it might say sugar alcohols, because fiber and sugar alcohols are not digestible. So what you do is you take your total carbs and you delete the fiber and the sugar alcohols, and that leaves you with your net digestible carbs for that particular serving of food. All right. And it gives you a general sense of the amount of carbs in that serving that will be absorbed into your body. Okay. So this is really awesome for macro counting. It's basically the total carbs minus your fiber and your sugar alcohols. So GIs that we talked about yesterday are, again, relative values that rank how fast the carbohydrates you eat are digested and metabolized, turned into sugar in your body. And they can be found in lots of different resources, and I'm going to post a couple of other resources that I use a lot. There's not like one database for everything, and you'll see different variations. It's not going to say like, you know, Kraft or whatever, Kellogg's Cocoa Puffs, that if you do it in one database, it might be not exactly the same in another, but they're always very, very close. All right, so I'll post this for you when we're done. So just as a review for yesterday, I want to get something up here for you guys. Okay, so just as a review from yesterday, carbohydrates are one of the 3 main classes of foods as a source of energy, right? Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Carbohydrates are mainly sugars and starches that your body breaks down into glucose for energy. All right, it feeds your cells energy, very basically. So the GI, or the glycemic index, was introduced back around 1980, 81, to actually rate the glycemic impact or nature of carbohydrates in individual foods like bread or breakfast cereals or different pastas, right? And the purpose was to see the impact of all of these, and was to be able to exchange one carbohydrate source that had a higher impact on blood sugar for perhaps one that had a lower impact on blood sugar. So again, it's a ranking system of carbohydrates on a scale of 0 to 100. So 100, it is pure sugar, okay? And everything else is ranked based on pure sugar. Let me put this graphic on for you. So here we go. So I showed this to you guys. It's in our Facebook group, but this just gives you an indication of what happens when you have low GI foods, right? I'm going to pull this over here so I can see it. When you have high GI foods, you're looking at like the red, the number 4 and 5, right? And you know, the sugar high, and a couple hours later you crash, and then you're hungry again. So when you eat high GI foods, you're going to be hungry more. So if you're trying to lose weight or manage your weight, it makes it really, really difficult. All right. Foods with a low glycemic index are digested slowly, right, and have a steady impact. So it's that green line, all right? They provide that nice sustained energy, and you stay fuller longer. And again, high GI is that red area. You're hungry, you feel great, you feel horrible, and you do it again, you feel great, you feel horrible, and it's just not a good thing. It's not a good pattern. All right, so let me get rid of that guy. So generally, a good rule of thumb is the more processed a food is, the higher its GI, right? The more processed, the higher the GI. And the higher the GI, those kinds of foods can lead to weight gain. We discussed this yesterday, and different disease states, primarily heart disease, diabetes, and cancers. So this is all great information, the glycemic index. Let's see how many we have. So while it tells you how quickly a carbohydrate impacts your blood sugar level, it doesn't take into account how much of that carbohydrate you're actually consuming per serving, right? So one tells you how quickly you're absorbing it, but how much you're eating of it. So to get a complete picture of this, you need to know both how quickly the glucose enters your bloodstream and how much glucose per serving it can deliver. So this is called the glycemic load. And it's important because if you consume a high GI food, right, that only has a few grams of carbohydrates in it, you don't have to worry about it impacting your blood sugar level, right? So glycemic load combines quantity and quality of your carbohydrates. And the GI for a given food, again, to remind you or reiterate, is by analyzing the increase in blood sugar after eating a fixed amount of 50 grams of that food. So they get like 10 people together and they serve them all of this, 50 grams, let's say, of watermelon, and on an empty stomach, and they see what happens, how fast it's digested and how fast it affects blood sugar, okay? So one problem with the index is that fixed quantity of that 50 grams. That's how the test is performed. And it doesn't reflect the actual amount of each type of food that you would probably eat in a sitting. So let's say, would you sit down and eat 50 grams of table sugar? No, right? Would you sit down and eat 50 grams of, let's say, pasta? Probably not. You'd eat more. So what they do is they say, okay, what is that, like a normal serving size of this food? And that's where the glycemic load comes in. Here's an example. Pumpkins have a glycemic index of 72, which makes them a high GI food, right? So you think, oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat pumpkin. However, it only has 6 grams of carbohydrate per serving, per normal serving, right? So it actually gives it a low glycemic load. So you can eat pumpkin without having to worry about spikes in your blood sugar. So here's the calculation for glycemic load. So it's the grams of your net carbs, right, which we talked about yesterday and we talked about today. Net carbs, which is your grams of carbohydrates in the food minus fiber minus sugar alcohols, times the GI, which you have to look up, of that food divided by 100. All right? So if you look here at pumpkin, right, 6 grams per serving, right, times the index of 72 minus 100 equals 4.32, which is way less than 10, right? So foods with a low glycemic load are 10 or less, And foods with a high glycemic load are 20 or more. And of course, anything in between is in between, right? Here's another good example. So pasta, we all love pasta, right? I've actually started introducing more pasta into my diet. So pasta has a low GI. It's like 30 something, right? So 55 or below is low. So you think, oh, you know, I can eat as much as I want. But it has that low GI because of a very unique structure that it has. And when you have pasta, also, you should cook it al dente because overcooking actually boosts the GI. So here's where the glycemic load comes into play. So while al dente pasta is low GI choice, eating too much will increase your blood glucose, okay? So portion size matters. So let's say you eat 2 cups of pasta for a meal. That amount of spaghetti has a glycemic load of 26, whereas the glycemic load of a half a cup of spaghetti is only 7. So you can use that little formula that I gave you, and again, I'll put this all in the notes after the class, to see like, okay, how much can I have? So instead of taking 2 cups of pasta, right, you could make a nice meal with a half a cup of pasta or spaghetti and then load lots of vegetables on it. So you still get your spaghetti, your pasta, and you're only impacting the glycemic load by at 7 as opposed to 26. So here's some other things to think about. These are interesting. Some high-fat foods have a low GI. And you'd think, oh, okay, great. I can eat this. It's got a low GI. Not necessarily, because if you take like potato chips or French fries, they actually have a lower GI than baked potatoes, like a baked potato. Why? Because of the fat. Fat tends to slow the rate of gastric emptying, okay? Your stomach emptying the food. So therefore, the rate at which that food is digested is slower, okay? So you have to be really careful and don't get tricked by a lower GI with fatty foods, right? It's kind of a trick. And then also those fats, most of those fats are bad fats, and they're going to contribute to, you know, heart disease and bad stuff that we don't like. So why slow carb instead of low carb? So those of you who know me know that I believe, and I teach in all of my programs, flexible, habit-based lifestyle nutrition, where you don't have to give anything up. You really don't. Low carb diets generally, any diet generally, restricts certain foods. Like even like a keto diet restricts so much. It's so restrictive. And you can't have any carbs, 0. And that's just not reality, right? So I've really found that those diets, they just don't support sustainability of a good, healthy, balanced diet, right? So why not be able to eat the carbs that you want? You just want to be smart and balanced about it. You know, follow my 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you're eating kind of the same things that you've pre-planned and that you know foster healthy body composition. But then you have those other things, the other times, 20%, yeah, have your pasta, right? Have those things, but have it be something healthy, right? Don't go out to Taco Bell. I'm sure that that has like crazy glycemic loads. So how do you utilize all of this information? You know, I had a graphic I wanted to show you. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. This is pretty cool. Let me pull this up. Let me bring it on my screen and kind of expand it here so I can see it. Okay, so here's a cool thing that I made up. So here's Kraft macaroni and cheese, right? And if you go over here and you look at the carbohydrates, it's 47. And right here is your dietary fibers. So you deduct that. You don't deduct the sugars because that's not sugar alcohol. You deduct out your 2 grams. It leaves you with a net carbs of 45. So now you plug it into, you can plug it into your equation here. So the glycemic load for Kraft mac and cheese is 45 net carbs, right? For a 70-gram serving right here, 70 grams times 64. Now, where did I get that? I got that from the University of Sydney. They're like the top people to look at for or go to for information on GI and GLs. And this is, they have like a food calculator, and I'm going to post all of this stuff for you, all of the links, so you'll have them all. But if you look here, the GI is 64, right? So 45 times 64, the GI, divided by 100 is 29. So what is the highest limit? Over 20 is really, really high, right? So this is not a good choice. And here's another thing, what I just told you about cooking. So they give you directions on this box to cook it, let's say 7 minutes. Well, if you want to make it a little healthier, you're going to cook it about 5 minutes, so it's al dente. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, see this fat here? So there's fat in it, 3 grams of fat, and there's 9 grams of protein. Both of these are going to actually lower that GI because they'll make it slower for it to empty out of the stomach. So to me, this GI is actually deflated, if that makes sense to you guys. But still, even if it wasn't, it's 29. And this is something that, you probably wouldn't want to eat. Or, if you calculate it out for 35 grams, maybe you just have like a little portion of it. But, generally it's a pretty unhealthy thing to eat. Processed foods, we want to just really stay away from. All right, so wrapping up here, I'm going to take this graphic off. There we go. I'm back. All right. So what to do with all this information? Think of it as additional ammunition. I don't expect you, nor would I do it, sit down and calculate every single thing I'm eating, unless you're really into it and you want to, do it for 2 weeks or do it for 4 weeks or 8 weeks. You can go to these websites that I'm going to give you, and there's lots of information on how to do that, just to kind of check it out and see what it's like, see how you feel. But for the most part, you want to look at replacing your high GI foods in your diet with low ones. There's a feature on the Glycemic Index Foundation that's called a swap feature. So you can go in there and it's really basic, but it's kind of cool to get started learning. There's also a website called Omni Calculator, and they have all sorts of calculators on there, like BMI and body fat, and but they have GI and GL calculators as well. And of course, the GI food search, it's called Food Search, at the University of Sydney. The one thing about the University of Sydney is everything's Australian. So like we have Cocoa Puffs and they have Cocoa Pops. They don't have Cocoa Puffs, but you can use it as a general guideline. And the last thing here is to, let me get you this graphic, is to not overeat, okay? You don't want to overload your plate. Low GI is not a free pass to pile carbs on your plate. All right, you still want to eat in a very balanced way. So you're going to have about a quarter of your plate low GI carbs, a quarter of your plate protein, and the other half of your plate as veggies. And then I love this graphic. It tells you, I'm going to pull it over here so I can look at it, some benefits of low GI awareness in the way you eat. All right. So I will be taking questions right now. If any, there's so much more on this topic, you guys, and you can go onto websites and learn more. And of course, you can always send questions to me, but let me get the comments back here. Does anybody have any questions on this? Was it confusing? I'll put my notes up too. Hello, hello out there in Facebook land. Oh, I'll move this guy. All right, so I hope that was super informative. And again, it's really all about balance, right? We want to balance our eating. And I love the plate graphic. It's so simple, but do a little homework. Maybe pull some things out of your out of your cabinet or your refrigerator, like go and check out, you know, the glycemic index and the glycemic load of an apple, or, you know, white bread. Check it out. Things that you eat, or maybe some things that you have taken out of your diet because they're not healthy. You can see here that some things that you think might be okay aren't, and things that you think aren't okay are. But it's all in moderation. It's all in balance. And always just think of your overall health and how what you're eating supports how you're exercising. All right. So I hope that was informative for you guys. Oh, not confusing. Thank you. So I'll put all of this stuff up. Look for it. Please share it with your friends, and have a really great day, everybody. Oh, and last but not least, I will post again. I'll post again about the challenge. And we're starting October 19th, and we have a second date, which is November 9th. So you can do either. And that'll all be posted up on with this video. Okay. So have a super fantastic day, and go do a little homework. It's kind of fun. See what you can do. And you can let me know. All right. Take care. Have a great day. See you all soon.